This program is made possible through the generous support of the Foundation of the FBA, provided by its Community Outreach Grant Program, which empowers organizations to develop and support projects that make a lasting impact on their communities. To learn more about the Foundation of the FBA and how it supports programs like this, visit www.foundationofthefba.org.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tashai. I'm really excited to be here with you all today for our conversation around bridging borders. We are going to touch on a couple of different topics today, including cultural understanding, civic engagement and international justice, and building a more equitable world. This is really important for us to kind of think about, especially it being the top of the year. It's a really great time for us to be reflective and think about how we can impact our communities here at home and how that can extend beyond the borders of the US. With Martin Luther King Day being right around the corner, it's a really great time to think about how we can serve our communities here at home, how we can promote equity and promote justice that extends beyond the US. So, to get going here, I will let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves. So, Alok, if you'd like to start, that'd be great.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alok Tiwari. I have close to 25 years of experience working in the insurance engineering industry. I'm an Indian citizen, but I've been in US for close to last 20 odd years. And I lead large teams based out of US, Europe, and India. And throughout my career, I've led large teams which have had a global impact. I also want to thank the Just Us movement for bringing us together for this important conversation. It's truly an honor to be here, especially at the start of the year and in the context of Dr. King's legacy. Thank you.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you. Miriam, would you like to go next?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miriam LaRusi. I currently work in customer digital analytics at John Deere. Been in the analytics space for a few years. My background's engineering, and I met Zeno when we were both abroad in Ghana, and I was at that time doing a Fulbright teaching English in Rwanda. So I've done a lot of different things in the last few years. But super excited to be here and chat with you guys.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And Justin?
Hi, I'm Justin Twitty. I'm currently a law student in Portland, Oregon. I spent the last 2 years teaching agriculture and agroforestry in Zambia in East Africa. My background is a lot in social work and administration, but I've always been involved with activism to some degree. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. And I know that our panelists are going to give us some great knowledge and some great tools to have us go forward. So we'll start with kind of a general question here. When you guys hear the term global citizenship, what does it mean to you based on your own personal and professional experiences?
I can get us started. For me, global citizenship is deeply personal. I'm an Indian citizen who has lived in US for nearly 20 years and have led teams across most of the Europe, South Asia, US, UK. This experience has taught me that borders are real, legally, culturally, economically, but human impact crosses them constantly. Global citizenship to me means recognizing those interdependencies and choosing to lead with humility and fairness, especially when you have the power within large systems.
Thank you. That's great. Miriam, I think you were going to chime in there, so we'd be happy to hear.
Yeah, could you just repeat the question one more time, just make sure?
Sure, of course. When you hear the term global citizenship, what does it mean to you based on your own experiences, whether that's personal or professional?
For me personally, I think it has a lot to do with perception of how people are perceived. People treat other people based on how they think that they are close to or related to or similar to them. That could be like demographic, age, whatever it may be. And globally, people feel more similar due to cultural values or whatever it may be to people who are like them or from their similar areas to them. I personally was born and raised in the US, and I have parents who are immigrants from different parts of the world. My dad's Algerian, my mom is Indian, even though I feel like, I mean, I'm born and raised American, I have an American passport, I grew up in the US, all that. Like culturally, it's hard for me to say like when I travel abroad, people consider me American because they don't, because they're like, you're not really from the US. So then it's like, okay, well, what can I claim or what should I claim? Or sometimes people don't recognize or they cannot guess my ethnic background or where I'm from just based on looking at me. So then they want to try to guess that I'm closer to something that's where they're from, even though it's not the case. But I think the idea of global citizenship doesn't have to be like just because you travel or just because you've been places or just because you've seen different things. The US itself is a very diverse place, and even just being able to and being willing to interact with people who are different than you or that you think might be different than you is how we can promote global citizenship. And really it's just about being open-minded in the communities that you're in, or even if you are willing to travel or have the privilege and experience to see other places, being willing to connect with people that are different than you or who have different values than you, experiences than you. That's what promotes global citizenship.
Thank you. Justin, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna tag on to what Miriam was saying. To me, it's like a lot about participation. So I think on the end of what Miriam was saying is like engaging with people, cultures, places that are maybe a little unfamiliar to you. I think a lot of time, especially like in my experience, people want to go in and teach things to people. But a lot of times participation amounts more to like spending time learning from people. So I think to me, being as far as being a global citizen is concerned, is like walking into spaces and being willing to learn and being willing to be observant and take in a lot of information from external sources or from people around you.
Thank you so much for that input. So, how has your work, whether it be locally or internationally, shaped your understanding of justice for others? And don't feel like you have to go in the same order. Anybody that feels moved to kind of jump in, please feel free.
I think we'll go backwards. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I think I can answer that. I think whenever I was because I went to university in the United States, I thought that there was an idea of justice that I had come up with or I had learned about in school. And I think after spending time in a culture that was remarkably different from mine, it changed. I think at one point that I thought that all of the mechanisms were there. Like you just operate under the assumption that all of the mechanisms are always there to enact justice in the way that you see fit. And then I think spending time, especially in East Africa, I think that sometimes you have to get a little bit more creative in the way that you would enact justice, if that makes any sense.
For sure. Alok, did you want to chime in?
I'll answer it from the perspective of global inequities. So I know your question is how your work has shaped understanding of justice beyond borders. When we look at it locally in US, especially in the context of immigrant communities, disaster response, and access to legal systems, these are kind of global inequities that exist everywhere. And that's where I've been blessed to have volunteered with organizations like the American Red Cross or even Legal Aid Society. That has just reinforced that, yes, things are global, they have local impact. It has also reinforced that justice has to be both systemic and human. So specifically about my work, I would like to stay with the volunteer work that I have done. Maybe in subsequent questions, I'll touch upon the professional work.
So we can kind of keep things rolling here. How do you guys think that international experiences or global frameworks influence the way that we address local justice and equity here in the US?
I can say in industries like insurance, where I have spent a long part of time, and risk engineering, including infrastructure, things like global standards have quietly shape local realities, like international safety norms, human rights principles, and even environmental frameworks influence how we define and accept risk, even though when they are not explicitly labeled as human rights. I think these frameworks give us a shared language to challenge harm and maybe demand better systems locally.
Thank you. And Miriam, looked like you were going to join in there.
Yeah, just to like add on to that, what Alok said, we have these basic human right principles across the world that generally we should all subscribe to and believe and value that should be upheld. But I think another big thing that traveling or seeing international places has influenced my experience of justice in the US is understanding how people's values in other places influence their social norms or why they think what they think. And a big thing for me since becoming an adult and traveling and seeing other people's values is I don't have to agree with everything they believe in and everything that they subscribe to but trying to just understand. So like understand but not agree. Those two things can be true. And understanding why they think what they think. And it's not my place to say, oh, in the US or from my upbringing, I believe in this, and that's different from what you believe in. And that's why what you think and how you practice this value or tradition or belief is wrong. And in the US, how we do it is right, or a value of superior, like feeling that what I think is superior, or maybe what they think that what they believe is superior to me, but just being able to understand why they think what they think and how they got to that point based on their experiences, and being able to bring that back to the US and say, okay, well, why do I believe what I believe? And is it because I think it's better the way it is here? Or how can what is being practiced abroad and internationally influence or dictate the social norms in the US that ultimately lead to how we perceive what justice should be or what should it look like for us? Because that obviously has changed also over time, within the US alone, but being able to understand how other people perceive justice and their values. And again, not necessarily agree, should be able to help you challenge your own beliefs in your own communities to understand why you believe what you believe and what justice means to you.
Great. Thank you so much. And Justin, I'd love to start with you for this next question. Can you think of any concrete examples of, thinking globally while acting locally?
You mean working internationally or working locally?
If you're local, like working locally, how can we think globally and apply like a mindset that's going to impact our community globally, but here starting at like a local level?
I mean, the one thing I've tried to do, so my mom is also a public school teacher, and one of the things that I was doing whenever I was in Zambia was like almost like a cultural exchange program where my mother would teach classes or teach more about the country that I was living in, which was Zambia at the time. And I felt like as you introduce people to a culture that's different than theirs, and to kind of tag on to what Mariam was saying at the end of that, of like recognizing that you can like disagree, or you can disagree, but also, I don't know exactly how she was saying, I'm sorry, but like disagree, but also respect somebody else's beliefs. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, or those two things are mutually exclusive, however you put it. I don't know. I think that like a lot of information sharing and a lot of explanation and a lot of like cultural exchange, that kind of thing is a way, like now with like the internet is ubiquitous, like wherever you go, it's virtually everywhere. There's a lot of people that have made a lot of strides in being able to connect rural communities in East Africa and in West Africa and in Malaysia and in Cambodia and all of these places where you can see how problems other people are facing, either help or incorporate coping strategies or development strategies or the creativity of other society or the creativities of other cultures and societies into your local community. Sometimes those things can be things as simple as games, and other times it can be a language exchange. But that's where I always encourage people to start.
Thank you so much for your input. It's really nice to hear like that it can be something as what seems simple like games. Like it's really just about connection when we really break it down. Alok, did you want to chime in?
I just wanted to give that's a excellent thoughts, Justin. I just wanted to give a quick example of disaster response and the example of American Red Cross. So they have the same global best practices in emergency management, but they're applied at the local neighborhood level. That to me is global thinking, local action.
Thank you. So, do you or can you think of any ways that education, technology, or legal systems may play a role in reinforcing or dismantling global inequities?
I can primarily speak to education because I had 1 year abroad as a teacher. I was teaching English, and even teaching English can be so controversial because I speak and learned American English, and abroad it's a lot of even just British English. And beyond just the semantics of what the language means, there's a lot of different ways to interpret language. And I mean, I'm familiar with British English because my mom is Indian and my parents learned British English growing up. But one thing that was really interesting to me is a lot of the students would make very similar mistakes in English. Like there was a same grammatical mistakes. And I ended up learning Kinyarwanda, which is a language spoken in Rwanda. And when you directly translate from Kinyarwanda to English, like that's where the mistakes were happening because the sentence structures are different from Kinyarwanda to English. And it's technically wrong in American English the way they were speaking their sentences, but everyone was doing it and everyone understood each other. And it was making me think like, is it wrong or is it just that I think that they should be speaking the other way instead? Is it my place to say that the way I speak English or the way that they think that I speak English should be the way I should be teaching them. Because if the purpose of language is just to be understood and communicate, they're already doing that. And the sentence is just, it's a small grammatical error that doesn't really like it's not you can still use it and it's fine. It's just not the best way of how I would say something. Um, so even questioning like how something like language and education is perceived or how we understand it, because if those students were to come to the US, the Rwandan students, if they came to college in the US, they would feel like, okay, now I can't speak that way, or the way I was speaking is not going to be understood the same because I'm not among those same peers. And now it looks like, okay, now there's a level of inferiority here because my English is worse, but it serves the job, it serves the function. And now all of a sudden, just being in a different setting makes it challenging for them. And, even just beyond language, obviously, we know how education is taught or the material that is taught can influence how people perceive themselves, perceive their country, nationalism, etc. And I was in a very unique place where, as a Fulbright scholar, your job is to represent the US and be a cultural ambassador. And there was this implicit belief that everyone thought I was just going to like champion the US and everything that it does all the time. And I just love the US and it's the best thing ever. They can do no wrong. And that was the idea that that's how I would represent the US. And that's not the case. And they'd be surprised when I would say negative things about the US. And they're like, how can you say that? Like, you're American. Like, you don't love your country. And I'm like, no, it's because I love my country and I want better that I'm telling you these things so that when you come, or if you want to come or travel or do whatever, you're not surprised and sold like a false dream because all you've been told are these super positive things, which sound nice, but to be properly informed, you have to like be aware of the good and the bad. And I'm not going to subscribe to the belief that just because we're in a big major country like the US, that it's inherently better. So there's a lot of dismantling that I had to do of what language means to communicate and also what it means to be from a bigger country like the US, especially because we have such a huge cultural influence across the world. I mean, movies, shows, all of that. And it just makes it hard because you have to question like, does what I believe or what I know is sharing that implicitly sharing the message also that what I think what I'm teaching you is better than what you already know, or am I teaching it perspective of here's something else that you should learn about or consider? And that's very challenging to do, especially because with children they're very impressionable and being a teacher is a position of power, right? So they take what you say as accurate, correct, or just at face value without questioning it.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we have a visitor. Would anyone else like to chime in on that question?
I mean, I'll say that it's funny how similar my experiences were to Miriam, especially with the idea of like specifically like I didn't catch exactly what language you learned in Rwanda, but the language that I learned in Zambia was Ichibemba, which is only I think it's spoken by I think somewhere in the neighborhood of like 60 or 70,000 people in the world. I don't know. But the way that you have to give direction is remarkably different. And it made me a better communicator in English because I constantly like I wasn't ever fluent to the point where I could say things without thinking. But whenever you have to think, whenever you are saying things to folks, you have to constantly reevaluate the way in which you're constructing language so that not only do you understand it as a quote unquote native speaker and like again like British English versus American English, so what is native at that point, but also like relaying that to somebody else. That was always a really interesting thing. And it like now I think you become a much more concise speaker even in English because of that.
Thank you. Alok, I don't know if you wanted to chime in. Don't feel pressured to, but if you wanted to, we'd be happy to hear.
I just want to reinforce and share some of the experiences. Growing up in India, you learn British English over there, and in America, you speak American English, and they're different. Even from the perspective of, you said, the role of education, technology, and legal systems. Even when technical systems are built anywhere, whether it's British systems that are built or American systems, there's always an option of two different English that users can select. And that just tells me that the concept of technology, law, and education, they're very powerful, but they are not neutral.
Thank you. That's a great point. And so, what responsibilities do you all feel that professionals have to use their skills in service of broader communities, not just institutions?
When we talk about professionals, and I know many of us over here are about to become lawyers and attorneys very soon, professionals, especially those in the legal domain or those in leadership, we all have a responsibility to look beyond institutional success. We need to ask that who benefits, who bears the risk, whose voices are missing. And using our skills in service doesn't mean leaving corporate roles. It means just influencing them ethically, transparently, and with long-term societal impact in mind. And that's where I'm very fascinated. Again, I'll come bring us back to the Just Us movement. I'm very fascinated with the mission to empower communities by providing accessible legal advocacy, educational resources, and initiatives. I think these are all responsibilities of professionals.
Thank you. And I think it's important to remember that professionals does not just mean one thing. Like, as you said, a lot of us are going to be lawyers, but that, we could be professionals at anything. A lot of us are professional students. So, I mean, I think that it's really important to think about professionalism from different angles. Did anyone else want to chime in here?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation the other day of like the role of invisible labor in the professional workspace. I'm actually currently at CES, Consumer Electronics Show, which is like a huge conference, 150,000 plus people. It's my first time ever attending. I work in tech, so it makes sense for me to be here. But the conference is very international, very diverse, but it is in my, I've been here a few days, seen thousands of people. I would say it's at least 75% men. And that makes sense historically because engineering technology is a male-dominated field, and I understand that. I study engineering. And the company I work for is John Deere, and it's on my badge. Like it has my name, my company that I work for on there. And I've had people come up to me in the past few days and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know women worked at John Deere." I'm like, "What do you mean you didn't know women worked at John Deere?" Or they're like, "Oh, are you like in marketing or are you like a writer with the media team?" I'm like, "No, I'm actually in analytics here working here." And that is a frustrating interaction for sure. And it's happened multiple times, but there is this role of invisible labor that I have to do. It's like, okay, I could just be mad and walk away, like that you said that to me, or you're saying something like that to anybody, first of all. But this is also an opportunity now as a professional to like let you know, like, hey, the job I actually do is this. This is what my role looks like. This is what John Deere as a company does. And these are the type of people that work at John Deere or technology and engineering like myself. So now at least moving forward, if they chose to listen to me or chose to listen to what I was saying, they can take that forward and not think things like that or be more aware of how different spaces look. But unfortunately, I do think that there is a huge role and burden on professionals to do this invisible labor because I'm sure I have blind spots as well that I just am not aware of. And until I'm confronted with them or maybe make a mistake or say something that I'm unaware of, like until it's corrected, I'm going to continue thinking those things. So to do the invisible labor of making sure that everybody is seen and people know what spaces look like, it's going to take a lot of work to get there.
And Justin, did you have anything to add on to that?
Sorry, I got a little sidetracked thinking about. I got a little sidetracked thinking about what it would be like to be a woman working at John Deere. Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, of course. What responsibilities do professionals have to use their skills in service of broader communities, not just in the institutions?
I have a bit of an opposite opinion here. And it's because of the way that I approach the things that I do. I don't think there is any responsibility. I think that the reality of it is like if you pay for your education or whatever your skills that you've developed, those are yours and you can use them as you see fit. What I would encourage you to do is not look at it as it so much as a responsibility, but more of an obligation. Like I think that it's more important. It's not like oh, I have to do this. It's an I want to do this kind of situation. So I think that maybe looking at something as a responsibility because of one thing might be a negative way of looking at it. I think that a desire or maybe it's more of a desire thing for me, if that makes any sense. So I apologize if maybe going a little against the grain on that is or maybe I apologize for going against the grain on that, but I think that people develop their education the way that they want to develop it and they can use it as they see fit. But I think that I would encourage people to develop a desire to use their skills for good. I think that that's important.
Yeah, and no need to apologize there. I think it's really important for us to kind of think about the different ways that we frame responsibilities and what that means, the connotations that we attach to words they matter. So I think that's a really good point.
I would say too, and this is just kind of where my line of thinking is going participating in international in activism or bridging borders or whatever it is, like I think a lot of times what you're trying to encourage is ownership from folks that live in these communities, to take ownership and stock in the places in which they live and to provide them with some sort of agency. So I think that thrusting responsibility on someone, saying like, hey, you have to do this because of this, sometimes removes agency from a person. And I think the job of someone trying to build those borders is to encourage agency with some other people. So again, not so much or less of a responsibility and more of a desire or a yearning even.
Thank you so much for that perspective. I think that's something that we can really take away from this. And I'm interested to hear what role you guys believe that young people and emerging leaders play in shaping global justice today. And young could mean any kind of level. It could mean our youth being still in high school. It could be youth in college. It could be youth in just life. So that is a ton of different stages.
Alec, did you want to go first?
So I'll just mention a few quick points. Young people are truly redefining leadership. And I'm very impressed. They are systems aware, they are values driven, and they're globally connected in ways, at least I can say my generation wasn't early on. In areas like climate justice, digital rights, equity, they're not waiting for permission. They're just going ahead and building movements, which is pretty exciting.
It's very exciting and very inspirational.
No, I second that. The thing about Zambia was they were kind of mired in a weird political climate for years. There's three main parties there. There's three main political parties there now: the Patriotic Front, and then the UPND, which is I think it's United Party for Democratic Development or something. I can't remember what the acronym means. But I had heard a story from the folks there that live in in their 50s and their 60s, and they're saying like, yeah, the youth were the people that were behind the regime change, like through democratic voting, through campaigning amongst themselves, like to provide better wages, to keep local officials more accountable, to place in a government that was going to come down harder on corruption in localities, things like that. So I know internationally, I've heard of youth movements, especially in areas that were maybe traditionally we've looked at as agrarian or rural, have been like on coming up. But I worry about the youth movements in maybe this is an archaic term at this point, but maybe in like developed nations or nations that we see as democracies. I worry about the youth movements in those countries because I feel like they've been stymied more so than they have in other in what I would almost venture to call the technological natives in the rest of the world. I mean, it's hard looking outside the West or describing it because our education is so just inundated with an us language and a them language. So I apologize if I'm being offensive at all.
And Miriam, we'd love to hear from you as well on this topic.
I love working with young people. That's like one of my favorite things because they're so passionate and they have the time, space, and energy to channel that into something. And one thing I've learned a lot from traveling is people or cultures or communities that have safety nets for people, they're more willing to take those risks. Like if I participate in a protest and somehow I end up in jail and I know I can afford the bail, I'm more likely to participate, right? Or if I know, if I go to any type of something and I get hurt, I know I have healthcare insurance to cover me if something happens, like I'm more willing to go participate because I know the cost or any type of consequence that could happen is so low, or I can bounce back and I have the resilience to come back from it. Youth have a lot of that. Like they have a lot of resilience and they have the ability to have a lot of resilience, which is why it's, I think, encouraging for them to be the stronger participants in movements and justice, like on the front lines. The idea of a safety net, whatever that looks like, whatever that needs to be, I just think youth realize they can have a lot of it, or they can take a lot of risks, and the consequences are not enough to stop them from coming back. That's what's important. And I had a conversation the other day with someone who was really passionate about a specific movement, but they're like, oh, I can never participate. I can never do anything. And they're like, oh, because I have kids. And if I do something, like what's gonna happen to my kids? And I was like, I've never thought about that because I don't have kids and I would do whatever I want, participate, because I know I can just come back the next day or come back the next month and still be an equal participant. But if you have the safety net in place, like a lot of youth do, and depending on, again, the culture and the economy of whatever, but it's easier to be more focused on channeling your energy into being passionate than worrying about like what happens if this happens.
Thank you so much. That's really, really good to think about. And in conjunction with that, I'd love to hear any suggestions you all have for students and early career professionals to engage in global citizenship. Like, I know that we're all talking about like there's not as much risk for young people, but is there anything that you would call young people to kind of do to engage?
I would say global citizenship doesn't require a passport or a title. It requires awareness and commitment. And you can engage by learning whose labor supports your lifestyle, advocating locally and globally rooted issues, and we see it happening everywhere in our communities, supporting community-based organizations and using digital platforms, social media. Young people are adept at it. I believe some of the most impactful global work happens without ever leaving your city. And with technology, world has kind of become an interconnected place.
Great. Thank you so much. I'd love to hear any more suggestions that you guys might have.
I mean, my biggest suggestion is always, I think, so, and this is kind of tail off Alex, like the internet has become very useful. And it goes back to my worry about young people. And we were talking about young people and the engagement in the internet with as far as activism and, movements are concerned. I think that it's also important to take, and again, what Alex said about not needing a passport to engage either is like, I know a lot of people here probably live between Massachusetts. I live in Portland. I don't know where everybody lives specifically, but you'd be surprised if you just walked out your front door and started learning people's names a lot of times. I think a lot of people forget to like introduce themselves to people that even live in their own communities and like live down the street from them and know how much there is to learn right where they're at. You know what I mean? Or how much there is to engage with right where they're at. So I think as far as young people, I would say like, touch like what is it, touch grass, you know what I mean, like like go talk to someone in real life. Don't think that like, I mean, it is nice to be able to have these meetings on Zoom and like transfer information and stuff like that, but like I don't like go look at the bulletin board at your local coffee shop or whatever people are stapling to a telephone pole and just show up and just see what happens. Like you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what you're going to learn. You never know what ideas you're going to be introduced to. So like engage with life I always try to say like engage with life in an optimistic but also curious way.
Thank you so much. I think the idea of just, like touching grass, I say that to people all the time, but I think it's just really like grounding yourself and realizing that it doesn't have to be this big grand thing. It can be just what is seemingly a small thing, but is really having a really huge trickle down effect. Miriam, did you have anything to add?
I would add only on one more thing, and that's to read. I think there's like a resurgence of reading coming back among young people because we had an era of like people had to read because there's no computers or whatever, and then reading kind of fell off because now everything is like digital or there's like Spark Notes or whatever. But now we have this like resurgence of like actual reading for the pleasure and enjoyment of reading. And reading, I mean, love libraries. And I think a lot of communities in the US and across the world have libraries. So I'm just going to use that. But like it's free or there's access for it to be free, especially if you're a student. And you can literally travel the whole world without going anywhere. And you don't have to you can choose a book or a genre or a topic or anything that you know nothing about, you've no connection to. And that's, I think, what's like most interesting is you're making that deliberate choice to engage in material with something you don't know about. I just read a book like last month on like the civil war in Sri Lanka. Like I don't know many Sri Lankans, and even if I did, they're not talking about the civil war with me. Like, that's not something that comes up. But now like I have that frame of reference or understanding about that, what happened and what that looked like and how it affects potentially any like Sri Lankans who are my age that I would meet today. It's a choice, right? It's like a deliberate choice that you're making to read about something that you don't know about or a topic you don't know about. And I think that's like one of the easiest ways to do it or start. You don't have to read like 50 books a year, but just read on topics that are fascinating to you, are interesting to you, are different from what you know about, or maybe even similar to what you know about, because it's probably going to be described in a different way.
That's awesome. I think that embracing that curiosity is going to take our young people very far. And so, with all of that being said, the Just Us movement is really grounded in justice, unity, service, transparency, integrity, community, and empowerment. Can you guys think of any of those, like which one of those has really impacted your work the most, or whether it's shown up or where it's shown up in practice?
I can say integrity has shaped my work the most. aligning with what we say and what we do. And I'll go a little bit in my experience, whether it's in mergers and acquisition or delivering large scale technology, or based upon my volunteer work of disaster response. To me, integrity means transparency, accountability, and respect for people affected by the decisions. And if you're asking for a second one, community will come a close second for me, because I do believe real change only happens when solutions are built with communities and not for communities.
Thank you so much. And Justin?
Could you just repeat the list one more time for me?
Sure. So justity, unity, service, transparency, integrity, community, and empowerment. Any of those really ring true to you?
I mean, community empowerment for me, I think most of my stuff is for like most of my, at least internationally, like most of my experiences in agriculture and agroforestry outside of administration. I think for the projects that I worked on, it was a lot of asking the county for money so that we could, so we could teach people how to grow food to encourage, to improve their diets so that their lives would be better. And if we have healthy food, we have healthy people. If we have healthy people, we have healthy communities. And therefore, if you have a healthy community, you have an empowered community who has agency and the ability to make decisions for themselves. So I think for me, it's always been about community empowerment. I think I'm not a Boy Scout. I was never in the Boy Scouts, but I like the old adage of the Boy Scouts of leaving things better than you found it. So for me, I think, yeah, I like that one. I like that one the best, I think.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Miriam, I'd love to hear what you connect with.
Yeah, I'm agree with Justin. Community empowerment are the two biggest for me. I think empowerment's like really can be really transformational, even if it's just like one person, depending on the community it's in. I personally work a lot with like STEM development in underserved communities and just exposing people to STEM. And it's not because I think STEM is like the only thing people should study or work on. It's just underserved communities just don't have access to STEM or just don't go into STEM fields as much. And my favorite part about it is not like teaching them how to build a battery or turn on a light, like whatever. It's not that. It's the fact that after they're done, they're like, oh my God, like now I can do that. Like I didn't think I could do that, or I didn't think this type of work was for me, or I didn't know I could belong in this kind of space. And now I'm thinking about it. Like just the idea, like just switching the mindset from like, this wasn't for me, or I didn't think I could, or I haven't seen anyone like me do this to like, I maybe could. Making that switch for a lot of people and whatever it may be, if it's STEM or any other application, I think that's what's most important to give people confidence and agency to feel secure in their own decisions and move in a direction. I always tell people like you don't have to have your life figured out. You don't have to know what you're doing 20 years from now. You just have to move in a direction that you feel good and confident in, and making sure that's an informed decision and that you're choosing your best self and being your best self and making that decision, whatever it may be for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's really important for people to understand, because I think sometimes people think they have to have it all figured out to make an impact, and that's just not true. You just kind of need to take a step. So thank you for highlighting that. And Alok, I know that you talked about community should be built like within the community, not for the community. So I'd love to hear you expand upon that and kind of touch on what does ethical community-centered leadership look like in a global context?
I was hoping to skip that question. Ethical leadership in a global context, I would say, it starts with humility, recognizing that local communities are experts in their own realities. It also means sharing power, being transparent about trade-offs, staying accountable across cultural and legal boundaries. If I were to sum it up, I would say ethical leadership globally looks like listening locally.
It's a really good way to kind of sum it up. Justin or Miriam, do you guys have ideas on how ethical community-centered leadership should look, or the best ways for people to kind of go about that?
Yeah, I like Alex's take. I like Alex's take on it. A lot of times people have ideas of what they want to see, and sometimes they don't have the access to the resources to make those things happen. And if you are a person who can access the resources, a lot of times people already have ideas of how they want those resources to be distributed. And back to Miriam's earlier comment about recognizing that some people have different belief systems and respecting them, but not necessarily agreeing with them. That all I personally believe that also allows people to make decisions for themselves. So you have to take into account what their decisions look like for sure, or what their choices look like.
Thank you. And Miriam, I'd love to hear your input as well, especially since you've had experience abroad. I'd love to hear if there's anything that you took away from that that kind of gives you an idea of how community-centered leadership should look.
The one thing that comes to mind is I'm always like thinking of the question, like, who's not in the room when making a decision? Even in my job in analytics, like when we're working on something for stakeholders, like who's not in the room, who's not in the decision-making process right now. So before we get all the way to the end, release something, and then they're like, oh, this is terrible. It's not what we wanted, or this is not how we thought it would look, or whatever, right? Or like whatever the outcome is, who is not in the room in the decision-making process. And I think a lot of people underestimate rather the initial planning phase, like before actually executing anything, the strategy and the initial startup of asking the questions of what are we actually solving, or what are the questions, or what needs to be, what is the question that we're trying to solve, or the problem that we're trying to solve before trying to come up with a solution, making sure that all the necessary stakeholders are there, and then also really thinking on who's not here right now that should be. I think people really, really do not consider that enough.
Thank you. And just to kind of bring things together, do you guys have any challenges for us in an actionable step that us as individuals can take this year to be more intentional as global citizens?
I would say pick one issue that you deeply care about, whether it's climate, immigration, safety, access to justice, and just start tracing its roots globally. And once you have done that, then commit your skills, not just the opinions, but commit your skills to local action. And all I would say is that success happens in increments. It's more about consistency, which matters more than scale.
Thank you. That's a great challenge for all of us. Justin, I'd love to hear from you if you have any ideas or challenges for anyone on this call to kind of be more intentional.
Let me think about it for just a second. I'm going to let Miriam go before me.
Sure. Sorry.
I kind of have a broad answer, and it's to do something that challenges you or pushes you outside your comfort zone. And that doesn't have to be within or limited to justice or equity or any type of social issue. And it's just for the idea of the personal growth of challenging yourself. Because I really believe like good habits promote other good habits. So once you're comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, whatever that looks like for you, it's like, oh, I've never been to a restaurant by myself, or I've never gone on a walk by myself, whatever that means to you, just the act of putting yourself in discomfort and being comfortable with that over time leads you to take other decisions that are uncomfortable for you, and that whatever that looks like for you could lead to participating in things, social movements, or trying new things that you never thought you'd participate in. But just placing yourself, whatever that looks like, again, for you, could be something small or huge, but just for you, the benefit of you for yourself, doing something that is uncomfortable.
Great. Thank you.
I wish that what Miriam just said was like in text so that I could emphasize it, because like I could not agree with that more. But also, like for me, I think I always challenge people. Like, I used to have this friend. I lived in Atlanta for a little bit, and I used to have this friend, and we never had each other's phone numbers. Every single time we would see each other, we would always have like these great, really in-depth, deep conversations. And I got to know him. I got to know his family. We're still friends over years. We do have each other's phone numbers now. But what I guess I would say is like talk to I can't express enough of like greeting people, like learn people's names, and like try to learn as many people's names as you can. Try to know as many people in life and around you in your life as you can, because I feel like, I don't know, there's something about greeting someone with their name. At first, they're very off put by it. They're like, "Why do you want to know my name?" And then over time, you remember it, and they like it almost like it's almost like a bridge to like trusting each other. It's like you've like taken the time to learn this little thing about me. So maybe this is small. Maybe it's not as big as, opening yourself up to a lot of uncomfortability, as Miriam's saying. But like I would just encourage people to learn as many people's names around you as you can, and to like genuinely engage with the space around you, like genuinely, because I think that's super important, especially for building community.
Thank you so much to all three of you for those inputs, whether it's just picking one cause, like Alok said, or whether what Miriam said, trying one small new thing, or what Justin said, just learning someone's name. All of those things can really empower us to start small and really grow that. So I'd love to open it up to any questions that anyone might have as we're creeping up on the top of the hour here. Zeno?
Do you all hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm on a bus right now. I'm taking a civil rights tour down south. I just came from Selma. It's been some amazing experiences down here. So I hope the signal doesn't go up. I hope you all, understand. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. To Shai, you did amazing. To our three speakers, and with Justin and Miriam, you guys did spectacular from what I could hear from, service. But it was a very good conversation. I did want to note that I am down here in the South. We started in Atlanta, we made our way over to Alabama, and it just became very evident from all of the talk of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and all of the research and reading that we've done throughout this trip. International justice, and when it comes to pioneering movements and getting inspiration, Dr. King, he was very inspired by the apartheid movement. He was very inspired by Gandhi. He was very inspired by these people from all across the world. And kind of putting together this presentation, this webinar tonight, I just wanted to, make sure that we all leave and know that this work is important. This conversation is extremely important. The things that we share throughout, verbally, through reading, as you mentioned earlier, Miriam, like it's all extremely important. And as we see more and more in our news every single day, we're impacting others' economies. We're entering spaces of policy all across the world. So this message is not only for you all on the call, but anyone else that sees this and any other time, just keep pushing forward, stay focused, keep your head down, and do the work, because we can have all the opinions we want, but nothing changes if we don't actually put the work forward and we don't actually take those steps forward. So I just wanted to thank you all for your hard work so far. And I hope you all have a great evening and wherever you are.
Great. Thank you so much, Dina. We really appreciate hearing from you. And just a huge thank you again to our panelists, Alok, Miriam, and Justin. You guys were great. You guys gave us a lot of food for thought. And I know I'm personally going to take away some of your challenges and move forward with that throughout the rest of the year. So I wish you all a really good year, really prosperous year, and a really nice evening. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Good
Thank you
night.
for having us.
Thank you all.